always want to, whenever we have these baby dedication services, we sort of direct and aim the message towards parenting, towards the home. And we're going to read a proverb this morning that I'm sure you're very familiar with. And I'm going to read it in a couple of different translations. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. And this is the King James Version, which is on the screen behind me. And it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it." The Christian Standard Bible says, "Start a youth out on his way. Even when he grows old, he will not depart from it." And the New Living Translation says, "Direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it." Any Christian parent would want their children to love and serve the Lord. That's our desire for them, to get saved, to discover what God's will is for them in life, and then for them to follow Christ. And these children are so precious. And somebody might even would call them a precious butterfly. I believe it was Kurt that mentioned Halloween. Sometimes at Halloween a child may dress up as a butterfly. In preparing for this message today, I was looking up some interesting facts about butterflies. And there's a reason why I'm talking about butterflies, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Most of us would consider butterflies beautiful. You know, they pollinate the flowers in the garden. But here's some things you may not know. Butterflies taste with their feet. They taste with their feet. They have some receptors on their feet. Now this one you may know because you've probably seen them. Butterflies like to drink from mud puddles. You've probably seen butterflies in mud puddles before. You see, they can't just live off sugar alone. And in those mud puddles are some minerals and some salt that they need. A butterfly, another fact is a butterfly cannot fly when the temperature is below 55 degrees. That one I didn't know. Most butterflies only live 2 to 4 weeks. And one last fact that I share in common with butterflies that I did not know, some of you may share this in common with them as well, butterflies are nearsighted. That is, they can only see about 10 to 12 feet. And then everything is blurry. And I can be the same way without my contacts or glasses on. And so on this baby child dedication day, the butterfly reminds us of something very important as parents. And parents seem to struggle more with this today than any other time. You say, what is it? I want you to think about metamorphosis for just a moment. It sounds like a big word, but some of these children that are in school know what it means. And basically, that is the process in which the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Does anybody remember what the caterpillar spends time in before it emerges out and becomes a butterfly? What is it that it's the inside of? Cocoon. Very good. And so parents, we're to be there for our children through these various stages, from an infant, newborn, to toddler, to a school child, and then eventually whenever it's time for them to get their wings like a butterfly and fly away. But let me tell you now where we go wrong in parenting, and I've been guilty of this as well. I want you to picture for just a moment a 10-year-old boy playing in his backyard. And he notices a cocoon. And as he's watching this cocoon, just then that butterfly pokes a leg through the cocoon. And this kind of excites this 10-year-old boy. And it's fascinating to him because it's amazing this thing is happening live right before him. But what he quickly realizes is that this process is very slow. And in fact, too slow for a 10-year-old to stand there and watch. So he decides to speed up the journey for this butterfly. So he gently reaches down and he widens that opening of that cocoon time went by, and bless his little heart, the boy could tell the butterfly still needed him. So he helped him again and again and again. And finally, that butterfly crawled out. But the creature that appeared wasn't beautiful. In fact, the creature was dark and deformed, and it could not fly, and it soon died. Had this boy done something wrong? Of course he had. You see, the creature was designed by God to experience the struggle of breaking out of that cocoon. And the process is supposed to be challenging and hard work. This is the only way that it will be strong enough to fly with those wings. And to someone who was just watching, it would seem to have been cruel to not help. Seeing the creature struggle like that, it made the boy feel like, I'm doing this thing a favor. But actually, the boy disabled the butterfly. The greatest help that the boy could have been was to allow the creature to grow up, if you will. The boy had good intentions, but by removing the struggle, this destroyed the butterfly. I think you see the picture here as parents, grandparents even. We want the best for our children and our grandchildren, and we have good intentions, but I wonder how many times that we have disabled them into maturing into adults, precious butterflies, if you will, because we did too much to help them. We mean well, but we can actually harm. So parents, the first lesson this morning, there are a lot of lessons in parenting, by the way, that we seem to make mistakes all the time. But the first one this morning is allow your children to figure some things out on their own. Let them struggle sometimes without rescuing them. That's how we grow. That's how we grow. If your child becomes accustomed to you rescuing them every time some little problem arises, then what's going to happen when you're gone? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when you're not there? As adults, you can't tell Dominion Energy or Edisto Co-op, you know what, I spent my money this month on, I ate a lot of expensive meals, and I went to the golf course, and I bet a little money out there, and so I'll catch y'all next month. See how that works with the power company. Or if you buy a new car or truck, see what happens if you decide to not make a few payments. There are consequences to our actions. So it's important then that we let our children learn some of these lessons as they're growing up on their own. Of course we love them. And we help guide them. And we answer questions that they may have the best that we can. But the struggling to emerge as a precious butterfly, that's the first parenting lesson for us this morning. We've got to let them struggle. So if you help them too much, then they'll be like that butterfly that was in the boy's backyard. You think you've got great intentions. You think you're doing them a favor. But what you're doing is making them unable to fly. So keep that in mind. Now with that in mind, we're just going to look at one more way that we can unintentionally hurt our children as they grow up as parents. These precious little butterflies. We love our babies. We love our children. They're so sweet and fun to hold. They have a special place in our hearts. But you know, some people think that their children or grandchildren can do no wrong. Which brings us to parenting lesson number 2. You are the parent. They are the child. You are the one who's in authority. You must learn to tell them no. There are parents out there who find it very difficult, if not impossible, to tell their children no. They don't have the courage to tell them no, whether in disciplining them or buying them things. And let me say it's okay to say no. Amen. Isn't it okay to say no sometimes? I think that's what's happening. You know, sometimes we'll say, what has happened to this generation? We've had a hard time telling them no. And some Christian counselors will call these kind of parents groupie parents. Groupie parents. And these parents are the ones who have forgotten their role as a parent. And they're all over our nation. And that term groupie, I believe, comes from maybe the 1960s, when you have groups of people that would follow rock bands around the nation and did all they could to be close to them, to be around them. They idolized and adored them. And so groupie parents then are similar in that they view their children as stars. And they honor these stars. They even serve these stars. They cater to their children. The children's desires is what runs the whole household. And there are plenty of households in Barnwell County where the children tell the parents what to do. You know this and I know that. These parents never miss a performance, kind of like a pageant mom or a dad that's constantly pushing sports. And there's nothing wrong with being there for your kid. But these groupie parents get to the point in which they pretty much worship their children. These parents volunteer at school or in the community as long as their child's going to directly benefit from them. If you call one of these parents obsessive, you say, you're obsessing over this thing, they'll say, well, they'll try to spiritualize and they'll say, oh, isn't she just a gift from heaven? That's what they'll say. And that may be true. And all these children that were dedicated this morning to the Lord are special gifts given to these parents by God. We know that. But remember, in our original text, God says, train up these children in the way they should go. That means you parents have a responsibility that has been placed upon your shoulders that you must raise these children into becoming mature and contributing, and I use that word again, contributing adults. You see, the United States is struggling with young families who want to contribute. Our churches are struggling with families who actually are equipped to give back. You know, if our 50-plus age group suddenly disappeared off the earth, I don't know what would happen to our churches. Outside of a few exceptions, we have raised children and young adults who want to consume, not contribute. They want to take, but not give. How does this type of parenting even begin? Quite often, parents who have had to grow up, maybe this parent as a child was ignored or neglected, or maybe they had to do without the extras that some of their friends had. And they're determined to say, you know what? My child will never have to do without like I had to. Or they'll say, you know, my daddy had to work all the time. He never made it to not one of my games at school. So I'm never going to miss one of my child's games. And that's a noble thought. And there's nothing wrong with it in and of itself. But here's the problem. When we put too much time and attention on a child and never deny them anything, never say no, then this will increase this child's self-image to an unreal perspective. You think about it. Any child surrounded by fans all the time will have an unhealthy view of his or her own importance. Remember, they have groupie parents who fret and cater to their every need constantly, and these kids become so used to being the focus, the center of attention, that the family is making all the decisions based on this little kid. But what happens when the child begins to grow up and is no longer the center of attention? What happens when the child is not in the spotlight anymore? You know, he's popular while he's the quarterback in high school. His friends love him. The teachers make sure he's going to pass his grades, you know, so he can play ball. But what happens when adversity hits? What happens when he goes into the world and he finds out that nothing is free? What happens when the big lights go out and he doesn't have his family young lady has all kinds of talent, maybe an athlete, maybe a singer, but it's wasted. This happens when parents treat their kids like idols instead of their son or daughter. Like it or not, all of us need to learn this lesson in life of give and take. Give and take. Sometimes you're able to receive, but many times you have to be willing to give. We don't get something for nothing. And we do our children a major disservice, causing them to grow up and they have so many relationship problems, they can't get along with anybody. Their spouse and them are constantly fighting because they're so used to getting their own way. That's the way they were raised. So the way, parents, that you raise these young children is carrying over into their adulthood. That's why it's such a very important responsibility. And so the second lesson then, and the final lesson is to love your child means that you sometimes tell them no. Teach them to earn what they have. Don't give them everything they want. Our children need to learn how to work well with others, even when the focus is not on them. They're not stars or idols to be worshipped, they're children. God's Word says train them up in the way they should go. Set safe boundaries for them, love them, support them. It's even okay to spoil them at times. But you're the parent. God has said you're the person who's to be in authority. Struggling and figuring things out in life. It's good for them. It'd be better for them to figure it out while they're young. You won't always be around. They need to grow up. You're raising these children so that they can grow up and leave their own homes one day. Will they sometimes make bad decisions? Of course they will. Just like you do and still do. Of course. They are precious butterflies, and sometimes it can be hard to watch them struggling, coming out of that cocoon, if you will. But the worst thing you can do is to reach down and help them to grow. Struggling is good. Struggling is good. May God bless you, parents, as you raise these children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. This time,